Good afternoon and welcome to the Art of Life Explorations with Angela Hardy. And today we are introducing you to the most fascinating, wonderful guy that I've just met recently, just the end of last year, and his name is Kevin Britz. If you don't know who I am, my name is Angela Hardy. I do transformational coaching or personal transformation work. I teach people how to love themselves, to have a wonderful life, to be free emotionally, to be free in their expression of themselves, and to be able to have a wonderful, successful experience of what it is to be alive and to really enjoy it. Now, Kevin is so interesting and wonderful to me because he does something quite different, but his philosophies, his understandings, and the way that he goes about all of this is right on par with what I believe to be critical and essential. And so we have the most exciting, wonderful chats. I met Kevin. This is Kevin Britz. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello, Angela. How are you doing?
So marvelous. Thank you. And you?
Good. Thank you. Thanks for having a chat. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you. I met Kevin when one of my friends said to me, I got interviewed by this guy who's got this radio station online. And I was like, what? This sounds like someone I ought to know. Kevin has a radio station online. What's it called?
Well, it's on my radio station, but I have a show. It's ebizradio.com, and the show is called the Lunchtime series.
Lunchtime series, and he interviews the most fascinating, most interesting, most wonderful people, all about all sorts of things. So let's just talk to Kevin about what he does, because for me to describe what he does, this is not going to be useful. Kevin, tell us a little bit about what you do first and foremost. What is the theme of your work and your life and your passion?
Sure, the theme. I use it like a theme. The first thing that always comes to mind is how do I add value to people's lives? And I think the entry point for me is really wanting to help people and showcase and get people to really get their brains on board with what it feels like and what it looks like and what it behaves like to be the hero of your own story. So a lot of the time, and I do that through coaching processes or leadership programs, or a lot of the time I do a lot of training, but specifically based a lot around NLP neuroscience and really getting your brain on board with having a different type of conversation. So I think, yeah, the theme would be, how to become the hero, how to be that hero in your world.
I love that. Tell us a little bit, because this is my most fascinating thing that I always want to know. How did you get from Kippy Joe, school child, to Kevin, not so young anymore, got a lot to say, got a lot on your mind, got a lot of experience and knowledge? How did you get here? Tell us about your journey.
It's actually, it's quite the journey. I mean, I started out when I was younger. I started I was a singer. I was quite the introvert. And I remember way back when it all started for me, I was standing on the bench next to my mom. I was about 3 or 4 years old. And I started singing with someone on stage. And she kind of looked at me, holding me like this, because I was, small enough to stand on the bench. And she looked at me and she said, how do you know how to sing like that? And I looked at her and I thought, I thought everyone could do that. It was like an obvious thing for me. And then in that moment, I realized, there was something special about something I could do that not everyone could do. And I remember that being like one of my first moments of realizing, there's something special there. And that sort of evolved into me becoming, often doing singing, a lot of stage. But my one aggravation was people sort of cloned me as that's the only thing I can do. And I kind of got frustrated with the sentiments of that. And I thought, no, I can do more than just sing. So I became very challenging in the from a point of view where you kind of go, well, I can do this, but I can do this too. But also going through a lot of conflict and having quite a traumatizing life, really, as a teenager, and really being comfortable in my own skin. And really growing into my own body. I always felt that I looked really abnormal. up until the age of like 21, I felt abnormal. And going through like a lot, going to see a psychologist and then going to another psychologist. And by the age of 26, I already had seen about six or seven different psychologists. And the last one cloned me as clinically depressed. And I knew that depression wasn't, I'd seen people who'd suffered from depression. I recognized what I was going through in a big way. And I sort of freaked out when you said that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna be that guy. I don't want that story. I don't want that to be part of the story. And totally went back into like, okay, so how do I fix this? If my brain got me into that space and nothing happened to me physically at that moment, I was just really depressed. And that was the reason behind it. It was like, okay, well, if I got there, how do I get out of it? And that sort of went into my research and finding more out about NLP, being an NLP practitioner. So at the age of 26, 27, I was like, okay, cool. I want to find out why my brain does what it does. And, you know, going through that process, at that point, they were selling it as becoming a life coach, NLP practitioner. And I went through the process. I was like, yeah, okay, I have more information. I know how to, you know, why my brain is doing things and how and where my focus is wrong, and et cetera, et cetera. But what I was not comfortable with, which was a complete value conflict for me, was I wasn't anyone's life coach. I was 27 years old. I wasn't going to life coach anything to anyone. You know, I don't have life. I'm 27, you know. So I'd have that experience, but I'd never actually actively practiced coaching at that age.
Yeah.
And then life happened, you know, life sort of went on. And eventually, I mean, how long do we want the story? Because I can give you snippets. How much time?
Sorry, I'm finding it fascinating.
No, so, and then at the age of 31, by that time I was already married. And at the age of 31, I was like, okay, I don't want this life. I don't want to be part of being married, and consequently realizing, okay, cool, I think I'm a gay man. And, you know, it sort of then made more sense of why I was so tormented in my 20s. And, you know, for me, it wasn't a case of knowing since I was 7. I didn't. It wasn't. Okay. So, you know, at the age of 31, I came out and then got divorced. And, of course, going through that process added a whole bunch of dynamic to my life. And, you know, I fled off to Thailand trying to escape my reality. You know, I went there and lived there for three months. To teach English, and I absolutely hated it because no one there speaks English, you know. So it's not like you can quickly go and sit with someone and talk to them because, like, it's not their first language. So I came back, and at the age of 31, I was living with my mom, and at that point, my ex-wife just had our baby girl. So I was a dad. At that point, I was a gay dad. I was 31 and I didn't have work because I just came back from Thailand. So being in that space and the judgment and the guilt that I put on myself around, like, at 31 years old, this is like what a loser. You know, I was such a loser. So I was magnificent.
Supposed to be something else.
Yeah, right. I was supposed to, exactly. Yeah. And it took a long time and to sort of shift that for me. And eventually my mother said to me, do me a favor, just go and do something with yourself. Don't sit and mope at home. So for 6 months, I went to exclusive books and I tried to read about your brain, about people's lives, about changing yourself. And I just spent about 6 months doing that. And invariably came across the NLP and what I'd learned and why this is important, and really started paying more attention to it. And fast forward a few years, eventually I landed a job as an MC at Silver Star Casino. So I don't know if you've ever been to Silver Star Casino, but they have a dude that does announcements, and the guy would go, "Good afternoon and welcome to Silver Star Casino. My name's Kevin Britz. I'm going to tell you more about the bingo this afternoon." It was like that guy, and I was so excited about the bingo. It was like ridiculous. And eventually, the same agency that employed me, and you know, at that time it was like you work per hour, and you had like 400 an hour, and you only had 2 shifts a week. But I'm like, okay, well, 400 rand, like just do it, just get it done. And eventually that evolved into someone saying, well, why don't you do voiceover work? Because you've got that experience. I was like, yeah, I can do that. I can try. And eventually got to doing voiceover work, and did sort of a recording for Cash Converters, and did a recording for a few brands. And then got a call the one day from F&B. And they said to me, yeah, we're doing this audition thing for the voice of Steve on the F&B ads. And I was like, okay, well, what is this now? And like, they said, no, Steve is this guy. He's a call center dude. He's really happy, and he just wants to solve people's problems. And I was like, okay, well, I can sound like a happy guy. And every time I'd read I was like, hello, I'm Steve from Beatbank. I want to be your, you know, that whole thing that Steve did.
I remember Steve.
I remember Steve, right? And then came this massive, big thing in South Africa. And at the time that it did become a big, massive thing, I was completely oblivious to the fact that it became a big, massive thing. I just knew, like, hey, I'm on radio. Like, hey, you know, every other day you listen to me and say that I'm on radio. And one of the things I asked is that just don't tell anyone you're Steve. I was like, why not? I'm like, I'm famous. You know, people know me. Why would I tell people? And so, but then I realized the anonymity of it was really feeding, because Steve, in people's heads, Steve looked a certain way to everyone differently.
Like the Steve.
Yeah, completely, right? But also people really loved him and really hated him.
Yeah, okay. So
they had their own kind of relationship with Steve.
Right.
And it became what it became. And, you know, we changed banking, the face of banking, and everyone was on the F&B app, and you know, you could open a check account on your app and all of the stuff. It was just amazing. And you know, it went on to world events, world prizes around marketing, you know, and won best advertising campaign for X, Y, and Z. And then abruptly, Steve came to an end, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, so that's that. And at that point, between then and then, I also did master practitioner in NLP, did more. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to know more about how to do this more effectively and how to use it more. And eventually someone said to me, well, why don't you just teach people what you know? And I was like, well, what do I know? I was really passionate about NLP. I loved the fact that you could have that self-conversation. You could pay attention to how your mind was doing stuff. You could pay attention to body language, voice, how to use it more effectively, how that influences conversation. But I'd also been on stage for all my 20s, being a singer, being, you know, all of that. And then I had this radio success, you know, and I was like, okay, well, I can teach people how to do that, right? And my first, it was strange because my first client that I ever got, I didn't have marketing budget. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this and put it out there. And my advert actually went out on Gumtree because it was free advertising. I was like, okay, I'm going to create a Gumtree. And yeah, right. And I got an executive from Nedbank to sign up on my presentation skills course because I created one. I took all my sort of ideas that I had from being on stage and, you know, incorporating techniques around NLP and the NLP communication model and the swish pattern and how you could step into a moment and create a new state and how you can step out of it. And it worked like amazing. I was like, you know, I had my first client. She had turnarounds in ways that I didn't expect her to have. And I was like dumbfounded, like that it worked so well. And I was like, wow, okay, that really is something. And then I went to one of my coaches and I was like, okay, this is what happened. This is, you know, what I can do. And he said to me, well, why don't you go and teach call center agents? Why don't you get into contact with call center agents? Because you know voice, you know coaching, you've done this, you've created content. I was like, yes, why didn't I do that? And then I was brave and contacted the CCMG, the call center management group. I said to him, hey, I've got this business. I'd love to come speak to all your people. Can I present to you? And I thought they would sort of first take their time and consider it, and look at the new website that I created and whatever. And they said, yes, these are the 3 dates. Can you make it? I was like, oh, wow. Obviously, like, just went, yes, I can do it. Yes, I can. And I was like, okay, I'll deal with it afterwards. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'd been on stage, but, singing a tune. So I could sing to anything, right? That'd be easy. But here I was now, I flung myself into a position where I was presenting to the degree where you're presenting to 100, 200, 300 people. I'd never done that before. I just sang. I knew singing. But I used the same strategy. Like, how do you step into that? What does it look like? What does the state look like? What do you need to know? What triggers are they going to be? What are you going to put on the screen? And again, had rip-roaring success, and everybody loved it. And I was like, okay, so this is working, right? And I was looking for the evidence of how to prove this reality, and found a lot, right? And eventually got to a point where I was working with the biggest call centers in South Africa. I was working with from F&B's call center and their service and sales call centers to Sun International, to MultiChoice, to a whole bunch of them. But in that time period, I realized that as much as I was working with the employees and the call center agents, I really wanted more influence on top-down kind of levels, where it was moving culture. It wasn't just teaching people to be effective, but how do you get the whole business kind of going? And then joined something called the LMI, the Leadership Management International. And you become a licensee to them. You go through their programs and their processes. And they've been around for the last 60 years. So, you become part of their licenseship, and you get content available through programs, online programs. You can app download. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And then incorporated that into everything I was doing. And fast forward to 2020, COVID happened. And I kind of realized, listening to everyone online, people were really struggling. People didn't know what to do. Businesses were closing. People were, the aggression levels that were on social media really amped up to such a degree. And I was like, okay, well, I need to do something about it. Like, what am I going to do in my house? Like, how do I do it from here? And it sort of phoned up a friend. I said to him, okay, like, from a marketing perspective, like, how can we talk about this online and just have a Zoom conversation? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And within probably a week and a half, I kind of saw what happened, and I sort of twigged, oh, wait a minute. I could have conversations with anyone, anywhere, and I could have conversations with people who really have a lot of good information to share and tell people more good stuff and add value to people's lives. And it literally snowballed into a complete show that I run online now. And it's called the Lunchtime series, and we do lunchtime leadership, lunchtime marketing, lunchtime coaching, lunchtime stories. And I've literally spoken to, I don't know the exact number, but many, many coaches and experts around South Africa, Africa and the world, but mostly in South Africa, around just coaching and adding value and giving people like yourself. That's where we've met, right? Being online and having and the value that you've also brought to that conversation. Yeah, and today, I do that. And in between then and then, having COVID, be what it is, it's forced me to take my business online and forced me to sort of reach into international space. And today, you know, I have international clients. I do a lot of international coaching, and yeah, it's a whole bit of a mixture of sorts. So, and I think that speaks to one of my highest needs is the need for variety. You know, so I like the fact that today we're doing recordings. Tomorrow, I've got a whole bunch of sessions that I'm doing, coaching sessions, and the 2 days after that, I'm doing training sessions the whole day. Like it really lends itself to being quite diverse and keeping me on my toes. So I think, yeah, I mean, that's the very fast version of all that story, where it comes from and how it happened and where I'm at the moment.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us. I just find, for me, when I listen to these kinds of stories, there's always this thing that I can see with it, that there's this amazing confluence of luck, work, previous experience, willingness, drive, but most of all is that when that moment of luck comes your way, or that moment of whatever you've worked for arises, the people who are successful are the ones that say yes to it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, I've never done this before, it's as scary as hell, you know, there's going to be all, I don't know, but yes. And that for me it's such a fascinating experience for how does life work? How do people get places? They say yes. They say yes. They say yes when they're scared. They say yes when they don't know. They say yes when they're quite sure that they could completely fall over and fail, but they say yes.
Yeah. I think, you know, one of the things that I think, because for me, I also very often refer to it as luck. And the other day, someone actually shared something, and I don't know the exact words, but they used, you know, as much as we think we have luck, what about alignment? And and it sort of tweaked me, and I was going, so if it's not luck and it's alignment, like what does that mean? And how do I show up, and who do I become in aim of the alignment of what it is I'm wanting to reach for? You know, so I think absolutely on that point, it's the yes conversation is so unbelievably. And I think one of the key things that I claim is that I'm not scared to fail. I will fail, and I will fail falling on my face hard, you know, and
ow. Okay.
Yeah, and then you get up and you kind of go, okay, don't do that again. Like, just don't do that. Yeah, don't do that again. But I think I would coin it down to like probably 2 or 3 things. It's like the tenacity of perseverance, that you just get up and go, get up and go, and get up and go. And, you know, like rest when you're dead. I'm like, we're going to be eventually, so just do it then. You know, don't don't worry about what people have to say. They're going to say it in any case. So just fail fast and fail forward kind of process. Yeah. And also, like, really start paying attention to the alignment of yourself. And, like, you know, if you look at leaders, if you look at successful humans in the world, like their beingness, you know, who are they, and how do they show up? How do they speak? Like, what is the energy you get from them, and what do you connect with on a regular basis if you're in their presence? You know, how do they show up in the world? When you start paying attention to the micro measures of someone's behavior and considerations of their words and how they input into life, they will share a hell of a lot of information, right? And if you just take the time to bother actually paying attention to someone else and not obsess about yourself, you kind of go, oh wow, like this is what I'm learning. I'm learning that, and I've learned that, and I've learned that, and you know. So I think it really speaks to those 3 things that I think are really important to get to a different space in your head.
So when you say alignment, are you talking about aligning with your authentic personality self and what's right for you, or are you talking about aligning to the kind of nature and the energy of the universe and what that has to offer for you, so that you're in a position to say yes to it? Or what exactly do you mean by alignment? I'm not sure that I'm exactly understanding.
To me, they're the same thing. I think very often people make the miscalculation of in comparison with, so I look at my life and I look at that, a different coach or a different success or a different marketing manager or a different account. And I kind of go, if I look at them, why they're so successful, and that's not, that instinctive conversation that we tend to have with each other. And that's the beauty about doing what you and I do, right? Having the recognition of your past and kind of looking at the evidence, and if you look at your past and you look at the evidence of what is showing up the whole time, you can start picking up clues to what's showing up in your world. When you have the reflection moment and you kind of go, that moment that happened, I start picking up evidence of good and bad. The aim of the alignment is how obviously do you cultivate the alignment of all the good stuff that's come along this path. And when you start really gathering and paying attention to that alignment of what makes you feel good, what really drives energy and drives you to kind of go, yeah, I want to do more of that. And for me, I call it my yes conversation. When you're having yes conversations and it's yes and it's yes and it's it feels like a yes moment. The more you're in alignment with that and not paying attention to the comparison you're making with other people, because that's not a yes moment. That. It's a quickest way.
Hell no moment.
Yeah, exactly right. You go, hell no, I'm not you, I'm me. I'm like, and the more you kind of go, okay, me, and people also get that me kind of conversation sometimes messed up with, maybe I shouldn't be so proud. And I kick back and kind of go, now, hell no, you actually need to be proud that you are who you are. I don't know if you know, but Google has this new campaign that they run. It's called the hashtag I'm Remarkable campaign. And they have a whole bunch of facilitators that sort of facilitates freely this campaign that speaks about I'm remarkable. It's called hashtag I'm Remarkable. And it's quite specifically speaks to paying attention and recognizing the things that is remarkable about you. Because if it's factual, it's not boasting. You go, oh yeah, okay, that's a good thing to sort of align with. So, and then again, speaking back to the evidence, you kind of go, okay, well, what is the evidence of what I have done and the successes that I have reached? And you start pulling that evidence back into who you are. That in itself becomes the alignment of you and the alignment of, in my opinion, why we're here. What the universe is, what's the point? If you're not here to inevitably experience the fullness of you, and that being in contrast, the fullness of pain, because we will have pain, but the fullness of joy, and to really make it your business to know who the hell you are. And I think that lends itself a lot to why I do what I do, because I think people don't have they don't make the time to recognize themselves. First off, they don't, a lot of the times they don't want to acknowledge the emotions that they're feeling, because if I don't have to acknowledge it, then it means it doesn't exist, and that's never the case. And really, just the more you kind of go, no, let me understand me, the more you're actually doing yourself a favor of stepping into a position where you can become more because you now know more.
So, I think when I think about that, I think about the thing that I see most with my clients and that I saw most in myself when I was doing this work for myself also, was that sense, for me, the right word of that is that I had the sense, or I didn't have the sense of permission.
Yeah.
To live freely, to have a sense of personal freedom in my mind, to know that it was okay to be absolutely me, absolutely every way that I wanted to be. There was always this societal idea or this parental idea or this, is it okay if I am, or am I good enough if I am, or whatever. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about there. Is like when you see yourself fully, when you know yourself fully, and you give yourself permission to be that and to experience life as that, then you can find something that is very passionate for you in that lights your fire, makes you feel very alive.
Mm.
And I think that that's exactly it. People don't give themselves permission for that. They don't even know how.
Yeah, and it speaks to, the one-liner that I use on my LinkedIn account is, I help people become the hero of their own story. It's purely based on the fact that, the amount of training I've done, the leadership programs gone through, the coaching, all of these 3 areas, in every segment, there's always a point of referral that I make to, but what about you, and who are you, and do you see that as important? And I think so many people, and I think it's kind of historical in a big way through so many cultures and lives and corporates, putting us in a position where certain people are there and certain people are here, and the moment when you really start just paying attention to me, and like, because for my reference, I never had a hero in my life. My dad, I didn't see him as my hero, but he was an amazing man. I had a tough relationship with him, but he was an amazing man. He was just an amazing man for a lot of other people. Like, he wasn't really present in my world. And so when I eventually got to understanding, like, well, who is the hero? If I look at my evidence and how this evidence is showing up for me, then I'm the hero, and I've made horrible mistakes. I have made, like, I've done stuff that are horrible, but what I do know on this side of that equation is that I've done a lot of change, and I've done a lot of healing and fixing and apologizing for what I have done wrong. But also from that, it's empowered me to rise above to the point where I kind of go, as the hero of my story, like, how do I show up today? What do I need? How do I do that really, really well? Because it's never the same for anyone else. It's my story. So, if I can give you a whole bunch of tools and a whole bunch of thought processes that sort of tweaks your brain into kind of going, hell yeah, I'm more important than I realize. I'm more important than I ever thought. I'm more important than I give myself permission to, then suddenly you kind of go, wow, that changes the trajectory of where I'm going or how I'm showing up on Monday morning. So yeah, it's, that's what I think is really, I get really passionate about.
And that's really beautiful. I think we have a very strong cultural misunderstanding around, don't be immodest, don't be prideful, don't be too good for yourself. I hear this a lot from my Black clients, especially. Yeah. In that culture, there's a very strong culture about, don't be too good for yourself, don't be better than everybody else, it's not acceptable. And all of this message that we hear, instead of understanding it from a point of view that says, if you walk around boasting and arrogant and looking like an a-hole, no one's going to like that. No one's going to like you, and you're going to have a hard time in life. But what it doesn't mean is that you shouldn't recognize yourself and the genius that lies within, and be proud of yourself and the effort that you've taken to do well, and look to yourself as a good person who does good work or who works hard at doing good work. And I think that message gets very confused. Don't be immodest sounds like, when you're a child, sounds like you're not allowed to respect yourself or to have a sense of yourself that is wonderful. Yeah. And they are two very different things.
To add to what you're saying, I think people also don't realize that self-preservation, and I just call it plain selfishness. Like, you really need selfish moments where you kind of go, no, this is not about you. This is not about my partner. This is not about my family. This is not about my daughter. It's nothing. It's just absolutely a me moment. And what does that mean? And what do I need right now? And what I need is X, Y, and Z. And I think people often don't relate to that. They don't know that that's allowed.
Exactly.
And they don't have that permission. They don't give themselves any kind of permission to go, I need 5 minutes here. Like, just let me be. I think it is a cultural thing. It stems through a lot of history about this country, but also, having the conversations that I've had with some internationals, again, that the color barrier is such a big thing that, whites against other colors, male against female, the sexism that comes across within a corporate environment, and the biases that we hold are so tremendously, so strong. We don't even realize that they're part of our makeup character, right? But until you really start paying attention who you are and more about why you do what you do and how you show up in your own behavior, you don't even realize that you're making judgment. You're making certain decisions based on biases, based on the history of your life, or the history of your parents, or your religion, or your all these facets. But the flip side of that, the moment you do, and the moment you start paying attention to, like, that could potentially be one of the biases I hold, or one of the belief systems I hold. Why is that playing out in my world? And is that possibly a changeable thing, right? And at the end of the day, I always refer to it as the potential becoming of me, the potential becoming of, it's that potential possibility that this moment could be better than it was yesterday. If you could just live in that space a little bit more often, you kind of go, well, if it's potentially possible, then what the hell's possible? It sort of opens your brain up to, wow. So, I love
that everything. It's like living within potential, which is, there's this balance to be had, right? When people talk about their potential, they often talk about their potential with great disappointment, because they feel like they're not doing enough, they're not enough, they're not making enough happen, whatever. But when we talk about living within our potential, and instead of being disappointed, we're talking about being open.
Yeah.
That's the power in potential, right? It's saying, what does this moment have to offer me, and what do I have to offer this moment, without all that self-criticism and that judgment and that, hashbang should be something else, where's the sparkle? But what is this moment, and how do I get with it and be present and be available to this moment?
And that's why when people, I think NLP to a large degree has such it's like the underdog the whole time, If people really start paying attention to the importance of what NLP really showcases, and that's what I love about the neuroscience around it, is I look at your reticular activation system. The moment you actually get that your brain is literally paying attention to a portion of everything,
filtering everything else,
that old filter system, and you're kind of going, hang on, if I'm aware of the fact that there's a filter here, and I'm not even consciously aware that I'm filtering stuff here, what am I actually missing? What is that? And that's why when you wrap your brain around it and you get to this side and you kind of go, no, there's more potential. There's potential of something. Like, what if? What's more? What's potential? And you kind of go, I could be missing out on such amazing opportunity if I just allowed for the space for it to be in the attention that I'm giving it. But very often, because of our belief systems and because we generalize and distort to such a degree, we don't even think it's possible. We just limit ourselves to that degree, and you kind of go, well, that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, and that's what I want to. That's why I challenge people to that degree, and I go, no, what if you were the hero of the story? What if you had a whole bunch of tools that you could start practicing on a regular basis and start cultivating habit-formed processes that allowed you to live in a space and in a frame that stuff was potentially possible. You were potentially possible to be whatever that was. You know, if you look at where the world and how fast the world has moved through the last 100 years, so much has happened. If you move it into the last 10 years, you know, what the human race has ultimately been exposed to and is potentially possible, you know, like in 2 years' time, we're going to Mars. Like, what? Like, really? You can, like, we're going to Mars? I, not in my lifetime, thought that was even a possibility. And
I'm just saying, why? Why?
So I mean, and then I get excited. So like, if that's the case, and you kind of go, okay, well, what's going to happen in the next 5 years? Can you imagine how much is going to happen in the next 5 years and what potentially could happen? It's quite exciting.
Yeah, it is quite exciting. I think it's really interesting. You were talking earlier about sabotages, and I work with sabotages all the time for my clients. Actually, most of the work that I do in helping people to learn to love themselves and have an experience of joyful pleasure in their life is to look at those sabotages that get stuck into their unconscious understanding of life that says, I'm allowed or I'm not allowed to be this. This is what I need to be. This is what I can't be. And all of the things that keep them stuck along this pathway. And you were talking earlier about sabotages as well. And I mean, you must work a lot with sabotages.
Yeah.
Whatever, but with your corporate clients.
And what's interesting is, as adults, until you really go through a bit of a brain process with people, as adults, you kind of go, nah, you know, I'm fine. I'm fine. We're fine. I'm fine. I've got this thing and it's not clear and I'm not sure about it. And you know, when you really get down to the crux of the root of the root of the root, and you kind of go, well, this is the root cause of where we're at here. Like, what's this ongoing conversation that you're having? What's that belief? And we all have them. We all have saboteurs.
Resilience.
How we handle them and how I build an awareness around how I'm self-sabotaging. And I look at it, you know, one of my clients, just from a practical, let's time manage, you know, let's like manage our time effectively. Breaking it down to the point where it became, you know, an awareness around how I was sabotaging a lot of his own time based on the fact that the need for significance becomes more important than the need for spending time with your own family. You know, so then you run out of time. You're always busy. You're always busy. And you're kind of going, well, why is this showing up as a regular routine? You can't have an app on your phone. You can't time manage your calendar. You've never got time. So like, what is that? Why is that happening? You know, until you get to understanding it, you kind of lose a whole bunch of information that you're not even aware of.
Yeah, it's so interesting that we always looking to fix the symptom. In that case, time management, the lack of time management, that's the symptom of something. And the irony of that is that although that is the motivation comes from trying to fix that symptom because it's a problem in my life, that symptom, the symptom itself is completely irrelevant, actually.
Yep. Because
it's sitting on top of the belief of, I have to make myself significant. I'm not enough. I can't just be, and it's not enough to just be and to show up and to let it just brew and be itself. So his time management problem actually comes from the lack of a sense of enoughness that it sits on top of. And I find it so amazing. Like, you must have this all the time. I certainly have it. My clients come to me with a symptom. You know, I struggle with anger. I'm like, don't worry about that. We'll sort that out in 5 seconds flat. Why? Because anger is a symptom of a sense that the world is against you and that you are not okay. And that everything is personal and that you have got some need to defend yourself against it. And a lack of self-worth and a lack of self-esteem and a lack of sense of lovability, these are all sitting on top of a symptom. I mean, a misunderstanding, a sabotage of a lack of enoughness.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is so exciting because that lack of enoughness does not exist in the physical world. It is not a real thing. You can't put it in a wheelbarrow and carry it around. It is a construct of the mind. And having constructed it in your mind, believed it was true, you live your life through that belief and that sabotage. And it's just as we talk, I've also done NLP, I do kinesiology as well, which is really, really quick with sabotage programs. It's so exciting to know that this thing that is such a struggle for you, that you feel like is this huge barrier in your life, it's just a belief that you constructed. There's nothing more to it. And so when you know it, oh, it's just a thought that I had, essentially. I had a thought, I plucked it in there, I let it brew in there, and I let it construct my entire life for me. All I have to do is deconstruct that thought and put a new one in place that works.
And just to add, lastly on that point, so many people build an identity around what they've now, brought through a certain period of time. And, in 6 months, a year later, or 5 years later, it becomes who you are. Your identity speaks to, well, that's who I am. I'm never going to be this. I can't time manage. Don't worry, And then they sort of create an entire identity around it. And you kind of go, like, how is that working for you? Is that really who you become? Like, is that really the story you want to tell? Looking back at your life and going, okay, well, this is who I've become. And you kind of go, when you have that realization, you kind of, can you see why, you really have to start interrupting that process? Why? Unless you really love it, if you want to keep it, great. That's your story. You want to tell that, keep telling it. But if it's really such a hindrance, you can pick up some evidence to prove it, the opposite to be true. So, I love it.
The proof is running around proving what the believer already believes. It's not that the world actually is showing up in that way. It's just that's all I pick to be my evidence. Is the thing that I really believe to be true. And that's so extraordinary because I can simply look for some other evidence. As you were saying earlier on, just look for the other evidence. It's there too.
And that's one of the things that people don't realize about gratitude. Gratitude is not just me sitting here being all like shoo-wah, and for some people it is. I get they like tuning into a realm or an energy. I get that. But what it also is doing, just from a brain science perspective, is like literally getting your brain to pay attention to what it is you're actually thankful for. And if you can pick up more evidence about that, your brain's going, oh, are we paying attention to that as well? Then you kind of pick up more evidence for what you could be thankful for. And purely based on the fact if you created that habit-formed process, your brain can find more evidence to prove it. Right? So it's kind of like, gratitude is not just a little journal you're keeping by the side of the bed. It's actually a brain process that's reinforming your language in your head. And that's, that's very important.
Yeah, and you can teach your brain to do it really quickly. I mean, do you remember your first car?
Yes.
What was it?
It was a green Chico green, like a emerald green Chico Golf. It was a 1.3 or something like that.
This is a universal experience. Before you bought that car, did you ever look on the road for emerald green Chico Golfs?
Hell no. Like, no.
Once you bought that car,
exactly, yeah.
Everywhere. They're everywhere. You can't, there's another one, there's another one, there's another. It's so extraordinary because suddenly your brain is just paying attention to something, and then it becomes so clear to you that it is everywhere. And that's what that gratuity exercise is doing exactly that. It's just waking you up to the fact that actually there's lots that's always coming. I saw another beautiful exercise for that was actually about looking at the things about me that I can be proud of and happy about and pleased with. Because obviously the work that I do, people are spending a lot of time feeling very bad about themselves when they come to see me. And so just these little tiny things, suddenly you notice, actually, I'm a good person. And then you start to see and collect all this evidence for the fact that you are a good person and you are worthwhile and you are filling space in this world for a good purpose and being of value to others. But you've just been ignoring it.
I do a similar process, and I challenge my clients to kind of get them to really realize that they absolutely don't focus on it. And I'll say to them, okay, for 1 week, every single day, you have to choose 10 things that you absolutely love and appreciate about yourself, and they cannot be the same as the previous day.
Yeah.
And by day 3 and 4, they just like, no, I can't think of anything I'm appreciative about myself. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we have some evidence to prove that you're actually not focused on anything you should be like. So it gives them straight away access to kind of go, wow, I really don't love myself, or I really don't appreciate a lot about myself. And it becomes evident, you know, and because it becomes evident, you kind of go, damn, I should really start paying attention to me more often, and you know, I really love about myself and how I do my life. Yeah, I love those processes. Yeah.
If my experience is created through that thinking, then that's the kind of thinking that surely I'm going to want to choose. And the only difference between somebody who is choosing it every day and somebody who isn't is that one knows that and the other doesn't realize it yet.
Exactly.
That's all. And so it's so simple. Do you know what I mean? It's like what I love about it is so simple. The only thing that you need to change is to realize that you're creating that experience through where you put your head.
And that's exactly the point on why you are the hero of the story.
Yeah.
Right? Because you get to be actively involved with that decision process. You get to actively be part of who you want to become in the world. It's the becoming of you. And then you're kind of going, wow, this is me. I'm so proud of who I am. I'm so capable of who I am. I'm so simply based on exactly that point. Yeah.
Tell me about the wow factor.
The wow factor.
Permission and the wow factor. You were telling me earlier about having permission to create the wow factor in your life.
Wow, I don't even remember what I said.
To create our work and the wow factor of who we are. That's what you were talking to me about, and I thought, oh, that is so beautiful.
Yeah. You were saying, you know, it's almost creating a sense of sexy for yourself, and I think
yes, sexy. It is so sexy.
Yeah, and I think that's everything that we've been speaking about now is really tapping into that sense of when I know who I am, and when I know what I'm doing, and when I have a sense of confidence, and it comes from an internal space, and you know, I have an internal reference to why I feel good. It really lends itself to a wow factor and who I am in the world, quite specifically and quite individually, right? And my mother always said to me, do you know, Kevin, if I have to explain who you are in one word, it would be charismatic. And I was like, ugh, that's like so like what does that even mean, Ma? You know, that's the response I had. Until
great word.
You know, until I really kind of got what it meant to be charismatic. And because essentially you kind of go, oh, you know, he just thinks a lot about himself. You know, it's like you kind of have that chauvinistic kind of approach to that. But when you look at what charisma is it really is an internal presence that you bring into that moment, you know, and it's quite, in my opinion, heavy. It relies heavy on who I choose to be in the world today, you know. And when you really start tapping into that wow factor and what's great about me and what I love about me and how I put it together and what's my swing on things, it really lends itself to stepping into your greatness, stepping into, and I know those sort of sayings sound quite cliched, but when you start paying attention to it and you really, and that's why it's the becoming, you know, stepping into that becoming of who I am. I think that in itself showcases, and without sounding a bit weird now, but it showcases godliness. It showcases the omnipotence of who you are, you know, and individually. And, you know, that is the aim. That is the point of, in my opinion, of why we're here. You know, why are we here? How do you reach how do you cultivate? How do you encompass that fullness of you in totality? You know, and when you kind of go, yeah, that feels good. You know, I like really like being who I am. I really feel good when I'm doing the stuff that I do. I really enjoy having good conversation like this and really speaking about brains and how they put together and why they do what they do. all of the, when you're tapping into it more and more, and you start recognizing that actual state, I think that leads to sexiness, the wow factor.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it exactly, is that it's not about becoming other than what you are, or more than what you are, or better than what you are, or something that somebody else is. It's about feeding that good feeling and letting that good feeling be who you are. And then looking for more of that and pushing it out there and pulling it in and pushing it out and having the good feeling. So it's the pursuit of what makes me feel good is unique and original to me. And that is my unique original wow, because that's what then comes out of me.
And to always know that you have that choice, you have the choice. You have the choice to decide how you would respond to whatever's happening. And, if you look at COVID, invariably, COVID has really, really wanted us to fail in a big way. And it has to a lot.
That seems rather personal statement for a piece of viral DNA.
No, but it does. It's really wanted us to fail at every level, from being able to breathe to like economies and countries, right?
Okay. Yeah. And
the flip side of that, you kind of go, okay, so how do I choose to respond to this? How do I choose what is bigger? And I think that, this is a powerful thought process as well. And I often share this with people, is in the moment of distress and trauma and sorrow and grief, and indecision, what is bigger than that moment? Can you be bigger than that moment in this moment? And if you can, reach for it. Reach for what's bigger than this moment, because all your brain is waiting for is for you to reach for the potential possibility of what could be. And if you could, then suddenly your brain's going, what are we doing now? Like, what are you doing now? It interrupts that conversation. And the moment you get there, you kind of go, okay, this is where we're reaching. We're reaching more, right? And I think that's the flip side of what COVID really has done for the world. No one has been armed and ready to deal with this. But in between the masses, there have been moments where people have been bigger than that moment. And because of that, people are starting to realize, actually, you have far more ability and power than you realize as an individual. And that's certainly what I've realized in 2020 about who I am, what I can do, and the amount of people I can speak to. So absolutely reaching for that moment. Well,
on that beautiful note, I think we need to call it for today. We could go on for hours, you and I, like this, simpatico. It was really, really gorgeous to talk to you. Thank you very much. If you have a look at the little ticker tape at the bottom, you can find Kevin's details and mine. And if you want to talk to either of us at any time, we are available to you. Kevin's website is leadershipbydesign.co. I had to go, how does the CO thing work? But it does, so don't panic. I haven't left the ZA off. Mine info@cloud9 or www.cloud9.co.za. Go and check out what we do, and we'd very, very much love to walk this journey of life with you if you are looking for a guide. Have a beautiful day.
Ciao for
Cheers,
now.
Kevin.
Bye.